We begin with the Trump administration in talks right now with Republicans over the next phase of the coronavirus relief package. A meeting was held in the Oval Office Monday to discuss what's known as Phase 4 legislation. Natalie Brand reports from the White House.
America, unite.
Republican leaders met with President Trump at the White House to negotiate the next coronavirus relief bill.
Kids in school, jobs, and health care would be the theme of the proposal that we hope to come together and present to our Republicans.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin will brief Senate Republicans on the plan Tuesday. Negotiations are still underway, but the current GOP proposal is expected to cost around $1 trillion. Republicans want tax credits that incentivize businesses to bring people back to work, as well as continued unemployment benefits, but with conditions.
We're going to make sure that we don't pay people more money to stay home than go to work. We want to make sure that people who can go to work safely can do so.
Negotiators say school funding is a priority, but the Washington Post reports it could be tied to schools reopening in the fall.
Schools are preparing for the fall without the necessary guidance and resources to open safely. The country is crying out for relief.
President Trump also announced he'll be bringing back the coronavirus press briefings, which were a daily feature here at the White House when the pandemic began.
I think it's a great way to get information out to the public as to where we are with the vaccines, with the therapeutics, and generally speaking, where we are. And so I think we'll start that probably starting tomorrow.
Monday afternoon, the president tweeted a photo of himself wearing a mask and said some believe it is patriotic to wear a mask and that no one is more patriotic than him. Sunday, the president said he does not support mandates for people to wear masks.
Natalie Brand joins us now from the White House to talk about all of this. Natalie, what else is being considered in this next coronavirus relief package?
Well, there's quite a lot. Senate Republicans have said the priorities include getting kids back in the classroom, jobs, and then also some health care funding. We know that leaders across both sides, senators and congressional members across both sides have said that they need more money for testing in individual states and also money to prepare the United States to deploy a vaccine if that becomes available. Obviously, everyone's hoping for that. The big question here at the White House and in Congress is a payroll tax cut, which we heard the president in recent weeks say that that could be a red line issue. Today, when asked about it, he said it's important, but does appear to be backing away from his threat of this being a red line issue. Though we did learn Monday night from the Treasury Secretary, who's been over on Capitol Hill, that a payroll tax cut is currently in the GOP proposal that is just now being discussed with Republican members on the Senate side. So those talks will continue, although we've been talking about there has been opposition across both sides to the idea of a payroll tax cut for a few different reasons. So we'll have to see whether that remains in the bill. There's obviously a lot of details to hammer out between the Senate Republicans and the House Democrats, who 2 months ago passed their own HEROES Act, which was a sweeping piece of legislation, $3 trillion. You see the Senate side, they're looking at $1 trillion. So there's a lot of different moving parts. We also learned that Tuesday afternoon, the Treasury Secretary and White House Chief of Staff are expected to brief Democratic leaders. So that will officially launch talks across the aisle with the other side. Right now, the emphasis appears to be trying to get all Republicans on board. And also the timing of all of this, everyone wants something to come together by the end of the month. And that is when these enhanced extended unemployment benefits are set to run out, Errol.
And meanwhile, Natalie, President Trump suggests that he will resume his daily coronavirus briefings. Just remind us why they ended in the first place and why the White House thinks it's a good idea now to bring them back.
Well, you may remember right around the time that the pandemic really set in the United States, we had these nearly daily press briefings that at times could go on for hours. The president and task force officials fielding a number of questions. And again, these were very detailed, lengthy briefings. They seem to wind back after that controversial press briefing when the president was talking about the use of light and disinfectants in fighting the virus. Then we had fewer task force briefings, or at least presidential involvement in those task force briefings. Since then, we still have had some coronavirus task force briefings led by the vice president at various agencies. They've traveled to the Department of Education and Health and Human Services. They seem to be having them in different venues. What remains to be seen as early as Tuesday, when the president indicated we could have the first return of a coronavirus press briefing with the president, is this a formal task force press briefing where we'll see task force officials with the president, or will it be the president simply addressing the public? And we'll have to also see whether he takes reporter questions, because in recent events we've seen that he's been taking less reporter questions. So there's a lot of details that remain unanswered at this point, but a White House spokesperson has indicated that this will be an opportunity for the president to address the public directly about the federal response and other pertinent issues. And we also know that Kellyanne Conway last week brought up the point that the president's approval ratings in dealing with the pandemic were higher back in March when he was giving regular briefings. The president also trying to make that point today and stressing that he would like to talk about therapeutics and vaccine development. Obviously, he would like to tout positive developments in addressing the coronavirus pandemic, but there's a lot of questions that remain about the overall response and where we go from here, especially as these states in certain parts of the United States continue to surge with new cases.
Yeah, it seems as bad as it's ever been, the pandemic. I want to discuss what's been happening in Portland. Federal forces there sent in apparently to respond to protesters. Mayor Ted Wheeler saying those forces are actually escalating the situation. City officials want them out. Meanwhile, President Trump says, hey, they're just there to help. How is the White House defending its decision, considering those viral videos we've seen of protesters being snatched up and taken away?
The president was asked about this today, and essentially he said Portland was out of control. He called some of the protesters there anarchists. This is also something that we've heard from White House officials and the press secretary, taking aim at certain cities where protests have led to violence and damage of federal property in some cases. And they've really defended their ability to try to go in and quell some of the unrest that they're seeing, blaming what they call liberal Democratic mayors. This creates a lot of tension, though, with those local officials on the ground. As you noted, Portland's mayor said he does not want federal officers interfering or intervening in this way. He said that their presence is actually making matters worse and escalating the violence. We also know the Oregon State Attorney General filed a lawsuit saying that some of those demonstrators or protesters were arrested without probable cause. Here in Washington, D.C., House congressional leaders have called for an investigation. They have a lot of questions about the authority and the method and the reason for federal officers going into Portland. They worry this could happen in other places, and there have been reports that some federal agents could be deployed to Chicago, for instance, where that Mayor Lightfoot, has also expressed opposition to this sort of thing. So it is creating a lot of tension between those individual cities and now some Democratic lawmakers here in Washington, D.C., who want answers, and they're also proposing a new legislation to prevent this kind of action. We'll have to see where conversations continue or go here in Washington and across the country if this continues to happen in some of these cities.
Finally, Natalie, I want to ask you about something developing where the sheriff of Jacksonville, Florida, now saying he cannot provide security for the Republican National Convention, which is expected to be held there next month. President Trump, of course, loving, enjoying, and really wanting a massive celebration as part of his re-election campaign. What more, though, do we know about this latest hiccup?
Yeah, this was really a striking statement from the sheriff of Jacksonville, who expressed what he called significant concerns about the viability of this event, saying, "I cannot say with confidence that this event and our community will not be at risk." Obviously, Florida is one of those states with surging coronavirus cases, one of the worst states right now in the country when we're looking at these rising case numbers and states trying to get them under control. Now, the RNC issued its own statement saying it continues to work closely with local leadership in Jacksonville, a spokesperson saying they're confident that state, local, and federal officials will be able to ensure a safe event for its attendees. But with this event still weeks out and the virus so unpredictable, everyone's waiting to see how the situation on the ground changes and how that dictates the need for possible changes to the event itself when you're talking about, what at one point was thousands of people planning on going to the convention. Now we'll have to see, is it hundreds? Is it far fewer? What are individual attendees' comfort level, and how does that jive with the local officials on the ground who will have to be an integral part of securing the event and making sure everyone stays safe from not only a public health perspective, but also safety perspective, Errol?
That's right. Protecting your own personal health appears to be front of mind for just about everybody. That goes beyond politics or anything else. And certainly what's happening there in Jacksonville, Florida is just one example of that. Natalie Brand, great to speak with you, joining us from the White House.
Thank you.